a building's influence doesn't end at its front door also. It moves out through a city or an environment or a neighborhood. There are ways in which it locates itself. There are ways in which it camouflages. There's ways in which it marks a skyline.
The building sits right on the edge of Midtown, right on the East River, and we've said from the very beginning that because so many people passed by it, we always wanted the architecture to be something that you experience in motion, right? And that's one of the other things that drove the building shapes the way they are, is making sure that from every angle you see it, or even from Midtown or from Brooklyn, you're experiencing really a unique aspect to the building.
Most people think of waterfront property. We realize that the waterfront views are spectacular, but the city views are spectacular. So you have this kind of incredible, 180 view on one direction, 180 degree view on the other direction. And how do you bring those two together? And then connect them with this bridge, which we really saw as this way of making a community.
We actually had a prescriptive requirement that we were not allowed to connect the buildings at grade. And we didn't want to create one building and another one where there's a gym in one and a lounge in another, and people are going back and forth kind of to their neighbor's building for one thing or another. We wanted it always to be one. And since we weren't allowed to connect them at street level, we said, well, why don't we connect them above street level? And then that started a conversation where the bridge became integral to the overall architecture.
So one floor is mostly mechanical, connecting the two buildings. The top floor is a kind of great lounge space, the sort of shared living room of the entire community. And then the middle floor is the swimming pool. And we were there saying, like, we haven't built a bridge in decades in New York. Let's make this all glass bridge right on the water, looking at the skyline, and wouldn't it be amazing if you could swim from one skyscraper to the other in the middle of Manhattan. Well, I think that a lot of the work that we do at SHOP is really about kind of natural materials, historic materials, and using them in sort of contemporary ways. And so copper was often used, on rooftops or trims or on towers or on pieces of a building, but we just said, it wouldn't it be really interesting to make this entire building out of copper? And then not only to make it copper, but to make it live copper. So it came like a shiny penny. And then it's sort of patinaed to this kind of rich chocolatey brown, but it will go Statue of Liberty green eventually.
Figuring out how to get a building like that done.
They melted a lot of pennies.
Billions of pennies. But it's of course, SHOP drove the concept of doing a live metal and doing copper in the first place, of course. But all the JDS projects across the board, you'll see that we are all about context in how the buildings are viewed today and how they're going to be viewed for a long time. Hopefully those buildings stand in New York and stand on the waterfront as an architectural icon for a very long time. And we want our buildings to look better with age, not for them to be at their best the day we finish and then for this slow degradation. And so we appreciate everything that New York is for what was built in the 1920s and so on. And we're very conscious that we're building something of that standard for the next 100 years.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the core to everything that we try to do. And contextualism is not looking like the building next door.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
At all, right? I mean, that's just such a misappropriation of the idea. And, it's how does it work? A building's influence doesn't end at its front door also. It moves out through a city or an environment or a neighborhood. There are ways in which it locates itself. There are ways in which it camouflages. There's ways in which it marks a skyline. We know a lot of things about how cities work really well. And we know a lot about traditional materials and how they age and patina over time. And why not take those and then absolutely the sort of latest digital technological methodologies of both fabrication, delivery, and assembly and construction, bring those together and think about how that building is going to occupy that space over a century.
I think I think you said it exactly right. And I would simply say that if a building is completely contextual and utterly respectful in every way, you're almost guaranteed to not be iconic. And so it's about finding the right way to push the envelope and not sticking your thumb at everything that's been done, using everything that you love about the history for the last, whatever it is, decades or centuries, depending on where you are, and pushing the envelope in a really appropriate, respectful way.